Hmm? Oh, yeah, it's that time of week again. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 4 Plus, the spookiest part of your week. Today, I felt it was time we talk about something that's been taking the world by storm lately. Superheroes. Some of us love them, some of us hate them, but we all know them. The genre has been through its ups and downs for decades, but it does almost seem like they're back in style again with the newest installments of Superman and Fantastic Four. Despite both of these franchises having gold and pure shit in their catalog, their staying power is undeniable, especially since these latest films are focused on the hope and bravery of its titular characters. But what many are probably not aware of is that comics can indeed have a dark side. I'm not talking about the simple Batman brooding over Gotham City darkness. Instead, I'm referring to stuff like, well, Marvel Ruins, a series where all of our heroes meet horrific fates either by just pure bad luck or of their own folly. Marvel has tackled heavy themes and darker atmospheres with its characters like in the aforementioned storylines, as well as other titles like Alias, Punisher Max, Fury Max, anything with the term Max if I'm being honest. And it does make sense as while yes, we do cheer when the Hulk throws a car into an alien's stomach, in reality that would be pretty terrifying to see up close. As a result, it makes sense that Marvel's characters would eventually be adapted into a horror series by fans. It should be noted that due to the sheer amount of content people have produced, we're not going to cover just one particular series. Due to this, we will be jumping around a bit with the content we will be covering as sort of a highlight reel. As a result, this is likely going to be a long video, so fasten your seatbelts.
Fasten your seatbelts.
But enough gab. It's time to grab our hammers, ready our shields, and face our heroes. But before we begin, please be sure to like and subscribe as well as check out our socials below as it really helps us out. Alright, now we can go. The Gamma Bomb Incident. Our first venture into Marvel analog horror takes us to the Hulk Gamma Bomb Incident, uploaded by the small channel Immortally18. This one being part of a quadrilogy of Hulk videos. The video opens up with text explaining that our narrator wishes to remain anonymous, but he is an engineer that worked at a gamma bomb testing facility. Just 1 week ago, that being around the time current politicians were young, a tragedy occurred. We are introduced to a Dr. Bruce Banner who is said to be the one in charge of the project. Looks like he got recasted. Again. Dr. Banner had told our narrator about his struggles with depression and past trauma before we are told about the day of the test. It was a bright and sunny afternoon when, right as the bomb went off, our narrator noticed the doctor wasn't in the room. Once the blast was finished, an investigation took place that found a burnt corpse. It was put into a body bag and sent to a bunker in the base. The body was confirmed to be Dr. Banner. Yes, this one isn't getting a movie. However, later that night, something broke out of the bunker at around 2:15 a.m. Witnesses claim it was an immortal monster, and we are shown audio and a picture of what exactly escaped the bunker. We hear a siren go off as a picture of the Hulk in the rubble of a structure is shown before the roar cuts us off. For those not familiar with the Hulk and his storyline, this is basically his origin story, but there's a couple differing details. In the comics, Banner was caught in the blast because he was trying to save a man named Rick Jones, who would later become A-Bomb. Rick is pushed into a trench while Bruce takes the brunt of the explosion and transforms into the Hulk. Here, there is no mention of Rick. Considering this one put an emphasis on Bruce's depression, it's possible he might have been trying to commit suicide. Additionally, the explosion did indeed kill Bruce in this version, only for him to rise from the grave later as the Hulk. This in some ways does bring up a recurring question and theme in a way with the Hulk's mythos. The Hulk has been confirmed to keep Banner alive even if he suffers fatal wounds. The movies even made reference to this when Banner confirmed he tried to commit suicide, but Hulk spat the bullet out that he tried to shoot himself with. I am no comic expert, but if this did indeed happen, where Banner dies at his origin story, it's possible the Hulk could be solely in charge of Banner with no way to transform back. At the end of the day, Bruce is the only one that can actually stop the Hulk. Without Banner, this could mean the Hulk is completely unstoppable, which is a scary thought. As for the analog horror itself, I'd say it's an overall good introduction to the concepts and ideas of Marvel analog horror. Instead of portraying Hulk's origin in a dramatic light, it's spun into a darker tone. It's a short video and it works for what it is. There's enough visuals and text for information, but also not keeping us bored. Feel free to take a look if it interests you. Marvel Catalog. Marvel Catalog was uploaded by Electro, or so the channel I Am Electro claims. Could possibly be an illusion or a chameleon. The video opens up with footage of the WandaVision cartoon many of us are probably familiar with considering the popularity of the show. Vision gets ready for work as suddenly the Galactus helmet opens its eyes, tease for Fantastic Four perhaps.
Say that again?
The screen turns dark and we're shown a conversation between Sherlock, or Doctor Strange, and Wanda Maximoff. Is this a Rivals reference? Strange tells Wanda she doesn't have any children, rude, and claims they don't exist. Wanda claims they do, as Steven repeatedly tells her to not do it. Wanda's face stretches as we hear a screech and we're greeted with a black screen. I think you laid it on a teensy bit thick there, Strange. Text claims they exist repeatedly as we're greeted with the interior of a home. We're reminded they exist before we see more interior footage. Another reminder comes up, starting to think this is a coping mechanism. We see footage of a children's bedroom as the text then says, "Please, no cherries on top." We return to our living room again, but see what looks like Wanda on the TV screen. This must be Adult Swim. The footage pans away, and then back to see Wanda is now gone. Wanda eventually comes onto screen within kissing distance. She then whispers something to us, must be Sokovian, and then she lunges at the screen. We're now on the floor as we see presumably Wanda walk by. Wanda comes into view before the text reads, "They're mine," ending the video. This one is definitely quite the jump from the Hulk video, to say the least. To better understand this, we're going to have to take a look at the Sam Raimi directed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Most viewers will probably already be familiar with the property, but in case you're not, I'll give a quick rundown. Wanda, or the Scarlet Witch, is struggling with the loss of her boyfriend, and is feeling a little saddened by not being a mother. She had used magic to create 2 kids in the aforementioned WandaVision show, but she had to erase them for the greater good. Wanda then planned to essentially travel through the multiverse, find a universe where she had children, and essentially take them for her own. It was implied that Wanda wasn't above killing her variant in that universe if she had to. The video seems to chronicle Wanda's descent into, well, madness. It additionally seems to take inspiration from the scene where Wanda hunts her variant down and possesses her, where the camera goes Evil Dead and takes the first-person view of the villain before springing into action. Only this time, we might be in the view of the victimized Wanda, culminating in Wanda killing her counterpart and now taking her place. Kinda similar to the Mandela catalog, isn't it? Hold up. But in all seriousness, I'd say that might be my one gripe with the video. It wasn't bad by any means, but the video sometimes leaned a bit too heavy into the Mandela catalog inspiration. The scene in particular where Wanda's face stretches cut a bit too close to the series. It almost felt like that one Nostalgia Critic meme that parodied analog horror. But aside from that, it was still pretty unnerving. The shot of the kids' room left me unsettled, and the Wanda sneak attack segment was actually pretty spooky. There's no larger series attached to this, so we don't really get any answers or any kind of resolution. I think the creator was just experimenting, and kudos to him for doing so. What happened to Tony Stark? The Iron Man analog horror is actually made by that name. This one's a 2-parter. Due to the sheer amount of content we're covering today, however, we'll only cover 1 episode. Sorry guys, I want to watch Supernatural. Our video opens up with the date, that being April 15th, 1979, using the wrong format of dating. I will die on this anthill, sue me. We see Tony Stark was kidnapped by terrorists and then found in the desert. It claims he escaped through unknown means, and it was found he had missile parts near his heart. He was only being kept alive by a reactor put in his chest, speculated to be the courtesy of his kidnappers. Quite high-tech terrorists, it seems. It claimed they kidnapped Tony so he could build them a special missile. We get info on Tony as he is the CEO of Stark Industries, which is a weapons company, basically a legal arms dealer. The location Tony was being held at was investigated, and there they discovered plans for armor. Additionally, bodies were found. The screen shows a distorted picture of a mangled body as sirens play, causing jump scares, ending the video. It's a story that's probably as well known as Spider-Man's now, but we will still cover Iron Man's origin story for those who just aren't that into Marvel. The video chronicled it pretty accurately, as Tony Stark is the CEO of a weapons manufacturing company, a title passed down to him by his father. Tony is captured by terrorists after a bomb goes off and pierces his heart. Due to this, his heart is replaced by an arc reactor to keep him alive. Tony is then forced to create a special missile, but ends up creating the now iconic Iron Man suit. Tony uses it to escape and ends up becoming the world-famous Iron Man. The video itself is similar to the Hulk in that it didn't change the origin of the hero or any characteristics, but instead added a sense of realism to it. In the movie, the action is PG-13, but realistically, if a suit like this were to be made, it would probably lead to a lot of closed casket funerals. The Iron Man armor can do all sorts of massive damage, from shooting out missiles, lasers, and repulsor blasts. In reality, there is no way that any of those shots in the movie would not be an R-rated mess of an explosion. It's a simple video with a simple concept, but that is what makes it sort of interesting. In reality, Tony would have seen quite a lot of gore and horrific sights when escaping the tunnel of his captors. That said, his simplicity is also a double-edged sword. If you know Iron Man's story, this wasn't anything new content-wise when it comes to the character. The big lead-up was really just seeing a bloody mess of what used to be a human being. Some may be disappointed with the payoff like that, but as for me, I'm mostly satisfied. I see this as a decent opening to a series that could play on shorter but more brutal interpretations of the characters. Spider-Man analog horror. It should probably come as no shock, but there is a very large amount of Spider-Man related analog horror out there, which does make sense. In the grand scheme of things, Spider-Man is among the most popular superheroes in general, and is likely the most popular Marvel hero. His reputation only increases with time as different iterations and new characters like Miles Morales get added to his mythos. This gives him a lot of staying power with his audience. Because of that, this section is going to cover as much as we can, but be aware we will not be going every single video in every series. We're probably going to jump around a bit if the series is a larger entity. It's possible in the future I might give a full analysis to more of these series. Yeah, I think that's how you say that. But right now we're going to go over the ones that stick out. Starting with the simply titled Spider-Man Analog Horror, uploaded by Krusty Lobster, cousin of Larry Lobster. The video opens up as a NYC PSA with a voice telling all citizens in the New York area that a new presence has been found, his name being, you guessed it, Webweaver, not Spider-Man. His origins are unknown, as are his intentions. The video claims that if we see him to say hello, as he is our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So friendly, his body sprouts multiple arms. Does this mean he can climb faster? We get a rundown of his good deeds like stopping trains and saving buildings. We're told if we see him, ask for an autograph and report any crimes to him like a good New Yorker. We are also told to not look up into the sky. Because, you know, the sun and stuff, I think. We are then told that if Spider-Man is inside your home, do not alert him, even if he's there for your son's birthday party. Our next step is to stay silent because he's probably sensitive to loud noises. We suddenly cut to handheld footage of someone closing their door before we then cut to black and are told to not take off his suit. That would be quite rude after all, especially because it's his skin. Wait, what? We are then shown a visual of the Spider-Man figure entering someone's house while they sleep as a tendril of sorts sprouts from his body. The tendril stabs into the human as another sprouts out and does the same. The PSA then tells us the suit is skin before it all ends. Right, this one was actually quite interesting. Despite it moving a little too fast at times, the video does a lot with less. The PSA format is pretty common in the analog horror format, but it does leave enough information for us to make this horrifying but still interesting. We don't know much about this Spider-Man other than his suit is indeed his skin, and that his motif is likely breaking into people's houses and feeding on them in their sleep, kind of like a twisted Santa Claus. To what purpose? That's left unknown, which is quite terrifying. This seems to be the first analog horror so far that has drastically changed the character from his initial design. Instead of reiterating his storyline or just changing the perspective of his actions, we get a full-on new version of the Spider-Man. He seems to be resembling the spider side of his namesake in this one. There has been depictions of Spider-Man becoming more spider than man. I think the 90s Spider-Man actually even touched on this at some point. But this time it seems to play on the horror side of the concept more. I'd say this is a pretty well-made analog horror, and probably my favorite one of the bunch I've seen so far. That said, this isn't the only one, however, to make more monster depictions of the character. Under the same name, there's an entire series of this uploaded by Flip-A-Titan Cartoons. The video opens with the last trustworthy news source in America, the Daily Bugle logo. It explains on May 24th, 2014, an outage at the NYC power plant occurred, which saw a woman named Gwen Stacy being found dead there. Spider-Man was spotted at the scene, but disappeared for roughly 3 weeks. A picture of someone swinging through the city was taken by local trash, Eddie Brock, and witnesses claim this isn't Spider-Man. It's Night Monkey. They claim this as he's quite stinky and doesn't behave like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Additionally, he isn't wearing his red and black suit. Instead, it is called the Crawling Human. That's it? That's the best I got?
Oh, that sucks.
In addition to this, a real American hero known as J. Jonah Jameson, or John Jonah Jameson Jr., was found dead in his office. Investigations haven't found much evidence, which is strange considering the photo of his body outright shows he's covered in webs. Night Monkey. The video ends on the Bugle logo. This video is part of a series, and for that reason we will be covering more of it as it's relatively short. It's 9 parts, but they're all below 5 minutes, so what the hell. Anyways, the video itself was actually interesting. If you're not in tune with your Spider-Man lore, Gwen Stacy is actually one of Spider-Man's first major love interests and does not sling webs around. In probably one of the most important Spider-Man comics in history, Gwen Stacy is famously killed by the Green Goblin by dropping her off the bridge. This is hinted at in the Raimi trilogy and shown in the not-so-amazing Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. After this point, naturally, Peter's storyline becomes more gloomy, which is hinted at in No Way Home. Only this time, it appears there may be more going on than an emo Peter.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
The smell of the skin and the death of Jameson implies that Peter isn't exactly Peter anymore. If I remember correctly, Spider-Man did get the symbiote after the death of Gwen at some point. If that's anything to go off of, Spider-Man might be under the influence of the symbiote and as a result, put some dirt in Jameson's eye. Only time will tell as we move on to the next episode. We open with another logo intro. We now have a narrator with a soothing voice, we'll call it, Explaining on June 2nd, 2014, more sightings of this creature have also seen a rise in people being redacted. What a sick fate. Among them are two of his more famous villains, the brilliant Doc Ock and the Lizard. 37 people since the last video have gone missing, and on May 30th, a 19-year-old named Juan Hernandez was found dead in his room. Guess he didn't follow the PSA instructions from earlier. All we have for clues are the audio of his 911 call and the recordings, as well as photos on his phone. The call chronicles an officer answering the phone, with Juan claiming someone is breaking in. Officers are sent as he thinks whoever it is has gotten in. His window breaks as he can see someone watching him from the shadows. He says that he looks like Spider-Man, but his eyes are dead as he's staring at him, menacingly.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
We see a photo of the human crawler eyeing up his next victim before the audio cuts out. Finally, a picture of Spider-Man. Jameson would have been proud. The police were unable to get back into contact with Juan, and by the time they arrived, it was too late. We see the photo of the crawler again as he creeps closer before another photo shows the body of Juan. We end on our Bugle logo with a gnarly-looking Spider-Man edited in. Yikes. Seems like Spider-Man has absolutely gone full Bully Maguire mode. The fact he's now outright killed two of his more formidable foes makes him more terrifying now, as it seems like not even his villains can bring an end to this whole thing. The call section as well was quite startling, but we don't get any more answers as to what is wrong with Spider-Man. This Juan character, from what we know, had nothing to do with Spider-Man or Peter Parker, so why did he kill him? Jameson and the villains make sense, considering this might be the symbiote enhancing his aggression against those that are active barriers to his life, but Juan, what is the connection? Maybe we'll find more answers in Episode 3. Episode 3 starts as usual, and we now see on June 11th, 2014, the victim count has raised a staggering amount, as we're now at 352 and counting. Spider-Man is still missing, as a team has been sent to find the human crawler. They sent only 4 people, to which half died. Yes, they weren't fantastic. They did, however, manage to get audio of the interrogation they had with the bastard, as apparently they used halothane? Halothane? What the hell is this? Alright, I'm gonna Google what halothane is. Let's see here. A volatile anesthetic that was widely used in the past but has largely been replaced by other anesthetics due to its associated risks. It's a clear, colorless liquid with a pleasant odor. That's interesting. Administered via inhalation to induce and maintain general anesthesia. So they just use like the dental thing on him? That's interesting. Okay, well, the more you know, I guess. The audio shows them asking just what is going on, as the human crawler seems unable to speak any complete sentences, claiming he must feed. He claims he is the Void, and that he's always hungry. Sounds like he needs a Snickers bar. The crew wonders if this is a virus or a curse or something of the like, but they negate this as none of the victims have turned into the Void, as he calls it. They ask about Gwen Stacy, to which Spider-Man gets the munchies and attacks. The 2 survivors, Christopher and Adam, survived but were injured badly. Adam is sent to a psych ward, and Christopher won't stop drawing pictures, to which we get to see one. How cute. End of the video. We seem to get a bit more answers, but also more questions. Spider-Man has seemingly adopted a different persona and not caused by the symbiote, so there goes that theory. He seems to have deteriorated into some kind of mangy monster. His speech is simplistic, and he seems to have an unquenchable hunger. I love Spider-Man, but I'm being serious. I can't quite point to what this is. It's possible this could be a more twisted take on the symbiote and its effects on Peter, or it could be a reference to the Man-Spider version of the character, as again, this appears to be a more animalistic Spider-Man. I guess the question is, how did this happen? Spider-Man has only seen Gwen die, so perhaps something up there had something to do with this. Potentially in those 3 weeks after, maybe Peter wasn't grieving, but instead encountered something that did this to him. As for the quality of the video, my only real issue with it is kinda small. I assume this team was some kind of government task force or special group sent to take on Spider-Man, but even with the bar over their profile pics, it really looked like these guys were a bit too young to be sent on such a task. But I also understand this is an independent work, so I can't really hold it too much at fault. I will say, the picture at the end had an interesting detail, if I am reading it right. If you're a Tobey fan, you'll note the mask tears are actually similar to the ones on the first and third movie. It's not exactly important, but it is a fun detail. Episode 4 opens up normally, and we see by August 24th, 2014, human crawler's whereabouts have been found. Apparently it was discovered as Aunt May was committing tax evasion for months, who can really blame her, and police were called to the scene due to the horrid smell coming from the place. The officers known as Marquez and Serrano arrived, but their footage was pretty bad due to a lack of a good connection. They must be using Cox internet. The timeline is that the duo arrived with a warrant before Officer Marquez entered by force after half an hour of silence. The police saw the room was filled with bodies covered in spider webs and were identified as the missing people. Guess they messed with the Amazing Spider-Man. We see a few more pictures before we are told there was one survivor named Sky, who was 9 years old. Serrano escorted the girl to safety before finding a note that was written by Peter B. Parker. So this is where Beyond the Spider-Verse is going. Gotcha. The note essentially is Peter giving up after Gwen died, claiming the guilt is killing him as he begged for forgiveness for what he will do. We see a picture of Peter at graduation and get told both officers were attacked by the human crawler. We see a picture of a decayed Spider-Man before we get hit with our signature jump scare of a tentacled Peter attacking the officers before the video ends. Damn. Like the last video, we get some answers and some questions. For starters, it does seem like Gwen's death was indeed the catalyst for this universe's Spider-Man falling apart. However, the exact root of what's happening to him is still unclear. The note points to the fact that this wasn't an accident, at least at first. Peter was stricken with guilt and seems to have done some kind of act that he feels needed forgiveness, unless it was asking for forgiveness and failing Gwen. If not, the note almost reads like a suicide letter, but considering what we as the audience know about Peter being this monstrous Spider-Man, it may simply imply he did something worse. Is this perhaps a mad science experiment akin to the plans for the now cancelled Amazing Spider-Man 3? If you're unaware, there were reports that the movie was going to focus on Peter trying to resurrect Gwen Stacy using some kind of wild science. As to other details like who the villain was, I'm not entirely sure, but if that's anything to go off of, perhaps this Peter tried using mad science and now it backfired and turned him into some kind of spider creature. He seems to be forming some kind of spider nest with the bodies of the missing being webbed up around his apartment. It's possible he's been fully consumed by the spider instincts and is now creating his own spider web. The only thing making me wonder if it is still maybe a wicked version of the symbiote is the fact that the last image looks a little symbiote-y, if that makes sense. It might just be the picture, but you never know. Regardless, this is looking pretty grim for Spider-Man. Might want to call Batman on this one. Regardless, Episode 5 starts us off with an emergency broadcast by the Oculus Vigilante Initiative, or AVI for short. You guys will tell me what it is. The broadcast says a Spider-Man sighting is imminent and to evacuate to safe zones while protecting you and loved ones from the spider. First step is to follow evacuation procedures by local authorities and head to the designated quarantine zone. Second is to secure all windows and doors before we're cut off by a blink and you'll miss it picture. It shows what looks to be someone covered in webs with red text asking for help and warning you to stay away from the eggs as they're eating them. The third step is to utilize proper firearms if you encounter Spider-Man. Punisher is about to have a field day with this one. We are then told to avoid confrontation and await response teams while avoiding any interactions with Spider-Man. Additionally, we are told to monitor broadcasts and await further instructions. Step 6 says to report any OVI incidents involving Spider-Man. These stick figures are just not having a good time, man. Step 7 is to ration your resources, and Step 8 is to await the clearance from OVI before exiting your house. We are reminded that your safety is OVI's priority. The clip ends on a shot of the Statue of Liberty. The video is a bit more standard than the rest, but it's still added to the lore. It seems like the Spider-Man problem has gotten out of hand to the point that an entire team had to be made for this whole thing. Furthermore, the very existence of this PSA shows that Spider-Man has become a large enough problem that they had to start implementing protocols when he's spotted. Overall, I'd say it's a fine entry in terms of world building, if not exactly scary. My only real gripe with the quality on this one is the constant flipping of the screen. I get that the grainy and bad quality of the video is part of the medium, but it was a bit hard to focus on the words and started to strain my eyes a bit. But hey, it might just be a personal issue for my old ass. Episode 6 opens with a quick animation of what looks to be a first person of someone going into their computer before we are greeted with our Daily Bugle logo. We start on August 21st, 2014, as we see the victim count is now in the thousands. We see that when the 9-year-old Sky was asked about what happened, she refused to talk to authorities. Instead, she made drawings that are currently being deciphered. We're shown a couple examples of this modern Picasso's work before we are told Spider-Man is removing organs from the victims, but their whereabouts are unknown. Missing organs include all the non-important ones like the heart, lungs, kidneys, and intestines. Good thing it all grows back. Additionally, while many people have been following OVI instructions, the majority isn't. Why am I not surprised, America? That being said, Spider-Man has some new names to go by. Vote on your favorite one below. One of which is The Void, and I imagine Sentry isn't going to be happy about that one. The video cuts to black before we hear a doorbell ring. The video then shifts to an animated first-person perspective as we head over to the peephole and see Spider-Man is in our apartment. Well, at least he was kind enough to ring the bell. We quickly run into another dark room as we hear Spider-Man trashing the place "He must not like my Batman" poster before he enters the room. We're hiding under the bed now as we see Spider-Man walk past before we get the most haunting text yet. Sup. Hey, I'm a switch, thank you very much. The video did move into an interesting direction. It provided more story as to how bad things are getting with Peter, but the real shift was when we got to the animated first person. I was actually not expecting that, if I'm being honest. The cartoon style did clash with the realistic looking Spider-Man, but really I didn't find it all that distracting. In some ways, it was actually quite welcome to change things up a bit in the format here. It's unorthodox for the analog horror, kind of, but spicing it up every once in a while is nice. So I was happy to see that. Especially considering we got to see things from the perspective of one of Spider-Man's victims, putting us right in the action. Gotta say, I am intrigued still. Part 7 opens up with an investigator trying to figure out what the hell Spider-Man is doing. There is little to no connection between the victims, as it's noted that their deaths almost seem ritualistic, like he's trying to summon something. Karlach to replace Gwen Stacy, perhaps? Only one way to find out. The investigator casually comes up with a deity named... Yeah, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. You guys can give that one a shot, have at it. We're going to call this thing Herman. It's associated with the eternal web symbol, as he claims that it seems to be a recurring part of his crimes. But he can't seem to find the connection between Herman and Spider-Man. Perhaps to bring back Gwen Stacy? The investigator decides to do the same thing and try to get close to this thing for recording purposes. We then cut to more first-person animation, as it seems our reporter has been tied up and inside the web of the spider before Spider-Man lands in front of him and conducts hentai. The video gives us quite a few answers in a way. So Peter is indeed trying to summon something. This something is called Herman. I'm not sure if Herman is a part of Marvel, but if he is, yeah, I haven't heard of him at all. As to what Herman is supposed to do is unclear, but the speculation that perhaps it will help resurrect Gwen Stacy might actually be the case. But how Peter came across this information, yeah, I got no idea. Maybe he's been hanging out with Doctor Strange a bit too much. Or maybe Gwen Stacy was just into some freaky shit. The other thing I'm a bit confused about is why this is turning Spider-Man into a creature. He has tentacles like the symbiote, but if this is a demon summoning, perhaps it's just the powers that Herman is giving him? It's also possible that a caveat is that the dark magic is corrupting him. Or perhaps Spider-Man did something wrong, and now the magic is hurting him instead. Regardless, we're finally getting some answers to all the madness we're seeing. Part 8 opens up with a count of 2,466 missing people before the audio glitches quite loudly. We get told by assumingly a soldier there's been reports of Spider-Man-like activity with secret caverns in upstate New York. Local news networks are reporting strange sightings, with one of the soldiers having tracked its signal. One of the soldiers seems a bit hesitant to go into this, but he's told to suck it up. The soldiers are locked and loaded, and they move out.
Lock and load.
This tape is part 1 of 2, so there isn't really much to talk about other than it's just a setup for the next episode. No real complaints here except for the soldiers looking a bit young again, based off what we can see in the pictures. But as stated, it is an independent series, so it can be forgiven, as I'm not expecting a full-on production here. Part 9 at the time of recording is the most recent upload, and starts with a warning of flashing lights, loud sounds, and graphic content. The soldiers are in the cavern and begin their investigation as they come across an entire tunnel worth of webbed-up bodies. The deeper they get, the more horrific it gets, as the webs get thicker, seemingly trying to preserve the bodies. The screen flashes that he is coming before it says he is here. We see an image of Spider-Man staring at us. The soldiers are reasonably unnerved before he finally speaks, saying they shouldn't be here. They're trying to reason with him, but he's not interested in talking and more into attacking. The video ends and we are finished with the series. For now. Oh, that was quite interesting. Despite few answers, we do get a better look at what's going on with Peter. These 2 episodes played out kinda like an Alien movie, with our soldiers going into a hive-like area only to meet their end at the hands of Spider-Man. Unless I'm missing something though, there isn't really a clear answer as to what Herman has to do with any of this. But it is an ongoing series, so it's not like I can really be upset at the lack of answers. Here's hoping for the series to get more attention and for the creator to keep honing their craft. You know what the wild thing is though? There's still more Spider-Man analog horror to cover. For this next part, we're gonna have to jump around a bit for content's sake. Uploaded by Just Preston, kinda sounds suspicious, but if it is just him, what do I know? There is a 2-season Spider-Man analog horror series. Now that being said, we are only going to cover a few episodes in this series. For starters, the episodes are much longer than the ones we just covered, as some reach about 10 minutes long and my editor isn't getting paid enough. Additionally, this is going to sound a bit harsh, but there isn't a lot of content to discuss in every episode. A lot of it is just text with one image near the end of the episode, and I feel that wouldn't be an entertaining enough video to present to you guys visually. It's better to watch for yourself than to watch me go over it, trust me. That being said, there are still some bright spots as the story in basic terms chronicles Spider-Man getting bitten by a spider, shocker, and starts to mutate into a monster instead of growing muscles and shooting sticky white stuff out of his body. Anyway, the first episode we're covering is going to be episode 4, Spider Response. By this point in the story, the narrator has found and taken the mutated Peter into captivity. The video starts and will continue to show text that explains that we are starting to notice changes in Peter as he has gotten skinnier and reached a height of 6'7". He would look good cosplaying Slender Man. They noted that he's been shooting bloody red webs as opposed to the normal white stuff, speculating this to be his veins. Eventually, however, he went full mute. The poor guy started shooting his face with webs and made a makeshift mask as eventually 8 legs grew out of his back. The scientists believe they could still bring out his humanity, and even were able to get some footage. Despite their best efforts, however, he just won't speak. Well, silence is golden, they say. The scientist then has an idea to film him overnight. After coming in the next day, they actually got results from the footage. We see a picture of Peter with his web mask fade into the frame as he speaks in this hauntingly deep voice.
I have no interest in hurting you.
He claims he has no interest in hurting us, and that while we think we can see Peter, he is gone. The spider is all that's left. The scientist is amazed that he finally spoke despite the fact that it sounded much different. Peter, however, remained quiet, but the scientist noted there are dents in the cell. Of the clips in the series, this one has more content than most of its episodes. The spider speaking through Peter was honestly quite haunting. Its deep voice and almost full awareness that this was once a normal human being brings a lot of dark implications. The series really only says he was bitten by the spider before it began mutating him horrifically, so it's a bit unclear if the spider has some kind of evil presence inside of it that's taking over Peter, or if Peter's mind is succumbing due to the mutations the spider has brought him. In this series, I will say this was one of the better episodes, as it showed enough footage while also providing enough information with the text, but not being too filled with exposition. My only real issue is during the footage of them trying to get Peter to speak, the eye movement clearly had the box around it. Sorry man, but yeah, I can see that a mile away. The other tape we will cover in this series is the 12th episode, which is the Green Goblin Serum Test. The video opens up on February 1973 and claims that the Super Soldier Serum, yes, that Super Soldier Serum, has been recreated. Furthermore, the creator of the Super Soldier Serum is going inside a chamber to test it on themselves in the form of a gas. Additionally, our narrator discovered a tape that provided instruction on how to apply this formula to someone. We get shown this tape as a purple background scene. The video claims we will be helping conduct a trial on the new Super Soldier Serum with a figure in a glass tube. I guess I can help out. I am something of a scientist myself. The first step is to get the canister and then place it into the port, which will turn the liquid into gas and release it into the cell. After doing so, we see an image of the goblin flash on screen before the narrator claims they heard screams coming from inside the lab. Inside the lab, they see a dead scientist and plenty of destruction. Perhaps it's time to go back to formula.
Back to formula.
In addition to this, the weapons room was raided, which included a glider and grenades. Shortly after, there are reports of someone flying around and blowing up rooftops. The Daily Bugle refers him to as our old friend, Hype Man! Nah, it's just Green Goblin. Shocking, right? Right after, we see a picture of the Green Goblin looking at the camera, as a voice repeats, "Good job," until the video ends. The video itself has once again a decent balance between text and visuals, such as the PSA and the Goblin picture near the end, to not only keep things informative, but also somewhat terrifying. I said it before at the last video, but this is one of the videos with more juicy content as opposed to a wall of text to read for the majority of the duration. The PSA was simple but effective in its scare with the sudden goblin face. My only complaint about it would have to be that the voice sounded a bit too robotic. Granted, this could be done on purpose as this was set in 1973, so the tech for this type of video was probably very cheap and archaic. It follows the beats you'd expect, but the last frame of the goblin staring at the viewer was pretty unsettling, especially with the voice speaking to us. There's still plenty of content from this series that we didn't cover, but if you like what you saw, feel free to check it out. There's plenty of imagery we didn't showcase that will probably keep you up at night, as well as a whole other season of it. On that note, it's safe to say Spider-Man is probably our most popular character to utilize in analog horror. As said before, it does make sense, as he is a highly popular character. I was a bit relieved to see that none of these analog horrors decided to take him in the direction of being a brutal vigilante, as that's pretty much what the comic Spider-Man Spider Shadow did, as it showcased a universe where Spider-Man embraced the symbiote as opposed to resisted. They may have all gone down a similar route of Spider-Man being more spider than man, but each had their own interesting takes on it, from paranormal entities to just full-on science fiction horror. So, seems like we're done, right? Well, there is one more series I'd like to cover. Marvel Analog Horror Timeline. I'm going to start the segment with a question. What is the one thing that made the MCU stick out from other franchises? Exactly, Stan Lee. It was also a shared universe. That was a huge part of its appeal when it was first starting out. Nowadays, it's pretty much a given that crossovers will happen, as they're borderline a regular occurrence in just single movies. But what if I told you that there was a series that basically created its own horror universe that is complete with crossovers? Well, I'd hope you believe me, as I'm not wasting time in a video to ask this for nothing. Uploaded by Adrian Man Ray, always knew that was his first name. The series is a whopping 41 episodes long, but for time's sake and a few reasons we'll go over later, we're only going to cover a handful of the episodes I feel stand out. The first being the first incident. Our video starts in 1961 and claims in that year our world changed forever as it was when the Fantastic Four arrived. The video claims they saved lives and were quite beloved by the public. That is until something changed. Dun dun dun. They apparently began killing people. And by people, I mean you and me, probably the dude across the street too. The narrator seems to be confused, claiming that this isn't the heroes we know and that they're going to get to the bottom of this. They promise to bring them back to the light. I don't believe them, I only trust pinky promises. The narrator hopes this is an isolated incident and reveals it's Nick Fury we've been reading from. Our post-credit scene is a sinister laugh from Dr. Doom. The video itself is simple, but I view it more as a teaser and an introduction for what is to come. There's no real scares or spooks to be found, but it does set the groundwork for the series. The Fantastic Four are now the Evil-tastic Four. Nick Fury is our hero, and Dr. Doom is dooming it somewhere in the background. The second video, titled Invasive Species, opens up with staticky footage of ants.
Ants. Ants. Ant-Man.
Text is put over them as it asks if we think they're beautiful. Sorry, I'm not really a thorax guy. We zoom in on the ants doing their work, as the text claims it does, and so does Janet. Guess we got a pair of swingers here. Unfortunately, however, a man named Wu didn't. How shameful. On the bright side, however, the video claims his corpse will fertilize the planet, as well as be good food for the ants. Curing starvation one anthill at a time, it seems. The video then says all of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on their hit list as they've been underestimated for too long. It is now time for the dawn of the planet of the ants. The text then bids farewell to Coulson and Hill before we see the shadows of a few familiar heroes. Oh, and there's a loud screen. The text reads that they are our enemy, and asks if we understand before we see Ultron appear on screen briefly. Yeesh. Alright, so let's start reading between the lines here. If you couldn't tell, it's pretty clear to us Marvel fans that we're dealing with the superhero known as Ant-Man, particularly the Hank Pym version. If you're unaware, Hank Pym is the original iteration of the character and invented Pym particles to help himself be able to shrink in his suit as well as fight crime. In the comics, his wife, Janet, or better known as the Wasp, joins him on his adventures. The two are actually quite pivotal in the formation of the Avengers, with Hank later having a bit of a villain streak with the creation of Ultron and the smack of Janet, which sees him become the Yellow Jacket. It seems like in this video, we're seeing a more crazed and psychotic version of the iconic duo, as it's implied they've gone mad and had multiple humans eaten alive by ants. The video itself is once again basic in its format, but to me it managed to be effective nonetheless. In many ways, it kind of came off as a serial killer type video, with its infatuation with ants and crazed proclamations of an ant rebellion. In some ways, this is quite fitting for the character, barring the obvious reasons. While the two characters are quite respected and are a big deal in the comics, their status among common audiences, particularly on the movie side, is one-upped by characters such as Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Captain America. It's not to say no one likes them, but you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who thinks of them as their favorite. This is only compacted by the fact that the latest installment, Ant-Man Quantumania, wasn't all that well received by critics or audiences. And no, I'm not calling it Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, she's barely in the movie. Sue me. In many ways, this almost seems appropriate that the characters are rising up to retake their status and being taken seriously. My only real issue with the video is that I felt the silhouettes near the end were kind of distracting. I get that it's a smaller production, so again, I won't hold it against them much. It might just be a me thing, but I know that exact cut of both characters, so it didn't look all that scary seeing them as shadows. But whatever, still an excellent example of Marvel analog horror. The next video, titled Last Words, starts with a narration from the star of our original video to all this, Bruce Banner. He tells us that he is a former scientist and now full-time man on the run. Bruce chronicles the abuse he faced from his father, with his mother being his only source of love. So of course Father Banner killed her, to which he attacked Father Banner. He lived with his aunt and cousin Jennifer in college before he got picked up by the military for their gamma radiation project. One day, while doing a gamma test, a young man named Rick Jones was in danger, which caused Banner to step in and save him, but unlike our last analog horror, it didn't kill him. It's revealed that Banner's abused past had caused something to awaken him as a result. No matter how hard he tries to fight it, his body fails. Banner, as a result, then reveals he's addressing this message to Fury. Banner is leaving, but not out of hate to Fury. Instead, out of concern for their safety. Banner claims that while Fury has his contingencies for the Hulk in place, he has no plan for Banner. Banner seemingly makes a heel turn mid-video, as he says the rage now fuels him before making a Hulk turn mid-video and transforming into the Jolly Green Giant. We then transition to a picture of the Hulk's shadow. Text reads out of someone apologizing to a woman named Betty, lamenting they could not save Bruce, regretting that he was too busy hunting the Hulk and didn't see the consequences of his actions. He bids farewell to Betty and tells her while he may have been a bad dad, he still loves her. The video once again covers primarily the Hulk's backstory, which we already went over and have seen an adaptation of in this format. The only addition being that of Banner's depression stemming from his traumatic past. Bruce was indeed a victim of child abuse, which was touched on in Ang Lee's Hulk way back before Marky Mark and Jack's complete lack of surprise played him. The comics implied Bruce always had some kind of entity like the Hulk inside of him, but the radiation just found a way to bring it out. If I'm not mistaken, there's even multiple versions of the Hulk that take control. Some being fans of The Godfather, some being old, and some of them being one of the 50 Shades of Grey. It was interesting to see the video take that route and acknowledge Bruce's troubled past and how that played into his development as the Hulk. I will say props to the actor here as well, as they were able to sell the emotions Bruce was going through. Additionally, the bit at the end was interesting. For those not aware, General Ross, aka the villain of most Hulk movies, and Han Solo, is the father of Betty Ross, who is usually Hulk's love interest in the comics. It's not too cryptic, but from what it sounds like, Ross is down, and there's probably no chance of seeing a Red Hulk in this series. There was actual talent in this performance, which makes this all the more special to view it as a fan-made product with passion put into it. I guess my only real complaint, aside from the same shadow complaint from earlier, was the fact that I felt the text near the end dragged a bit. It held on the same text for a lot longer than I felt was needed, so it kinda killed the pacing. It didn't ruin the video, but it just could use a bit of a speed up is all. Demon in a Bottle is the name of the next episode, and it starts in 1963, starring Tony Stark. Iron Man lives again. Rest in peace, Ozzy. We hear Tony Stark introduce himself and explain the backstory mentioned earlier of being captured and creating the Iron Man outfit. He pays respect to Yinsen, who was another captive who helped him make the suit while commenting on the hell they put him through. We jump to April of the same year as Tony wonders if the people are even worth saving. He talks about the pressure he's under from Pepper to Rhodes and even Fury. By May, Tony has been offered a spot in the Avengers, but he rejects it. He seems to have disdain for those he would be protecting, claiming they're like the monsters who captured him. In June, Tony is threatening Rhodes before we cut to July, where Tony seems to be angered by Rhodes stealing the Model 2 armor, threatening to melt him and squish all their bones. Sounds like a human smoothie. Gross. August sees Tony now wallowing in his loneliness, Rhodes having abandoned him and Pepper getting with Happy. Hey man, maybe it's for the better. September rolls by and Tony has channeled all this pain into a positive project, that being the Model 3. Tony is quite eager to show this suit off. A little too eager, if you ask me. Tony then suits up, finds Rhodes, and solo ults him. We cut to black before Tony returns asking if we see the beauty in people rising only to fall down, claiming humans will break the earth with their failure, and that no matter how hard we try, once it's over, Tony will be ruling over us. If you're unaware, the namesake of the video is indeed an actual storyline from the comics. It was loosely adapted in Iron Man 2, as in it, Tony struggles with alcohol addiction, which sees Rhodes take the Model 2 armor and become War Machine. This is one of Iron Man's more famous storylines, as it gave us the now iconic partner to Iron Man, but it also let us see Tony in an imperfect light. It added depth to the character and made him more realistic as a character. Additionally, movie fans may not be aware, but Pepper actually ends up with Happy instead of Tony. It's okay, he's the real winner. He ends up with Emma Frost. That said, this video seems to chronicle Tony's downfall and inability to overcome his inner demons. It seems like the haunting memories of what happened when he was captured left Tony in a critical state. It's very likely Tony was struggling with an alcohol addiction, and with no one there to support him or help him out, Tony succumbed to his despair. It all culminated in him executing his once best friend. I'll say it again, I actually did like the voice acting on this one. I'm not sure if it's the same guy, but props to him if it is. The robotic version of his voice also worked pretty well, considering it added an inhuman feeling to it, making it seem as though Tony is no longer Tony, and is instead fully enveloped in being Iron Man. Once again, I have one small issue, which was that the video primarily consisted of just white text over black screen. The audio did make up for it, as did the ending visual of Iron Man, so really it's not an earth-shattering issue. Another episode that drew my attention was The Oath that follows Doctor Strange. We open with Doctor Strange introducing himself and explaining his backstory, where he was a car crash victim, which prevented him from doing his job as a surgeon. Now he's the Sorcerer Supreme. Lately, however, he feels something is wrong, mentioning Stark going mad, the Fantastic Four going evil, as well as even Spider-Man has lost it. The Doctor is at a loss on how to fix it, despite promising Fury he can. Strange notes, however, that there's some kind of force that's making this worse somehow. In a desperate attempt to fix this, he's had to use dark forces. It's only made things worse, as he's now lost the usage of his hands and is overcome with dark magic. He feels like he has failed everyone. but also as if he's being controlled. He apologizes as we can hear dark whispers echoing. Strange begs for it to stop as he succumbs to them. Strange, use your ult, man, come on. We leave on a rotted-looking Strange claiming things have gotten out of hand. The video follows a similar format to previous ones, which is audio of the hero losing control of themselves before we see them succumb to their worst habits. And while it does seem to be repeating itself a bit, it did manage to make interesting results. Firstly, Strange was claiming there's some kind of force pushing things into place. This implies there is something higher at play in the situation, but what it is we don't really know. This could be something like Nightmare, or maybe something original. The only theory I have is that this could probably be the work of Scarlet Witch. I swear I'm not obsessed with her, okay? The reason being is that when we hear the whisper as Strange begins to fall apart, they sound like a female. Now yes, this could be other magic users such as Morgan Le Fay, or maybe it's just Agatha all along. And again, I don't really have much to prove that it is her, but I will say the very concept of this is actually kind of terrifying. It explains why Bruce seemingly had a sudden villain turn in his tape, but it also works well because if Strange is right, it's interesting to think Iron Man succumbing to his demons was the work of sabotage. Same with Ant-Man and the Wasp going psycho. But hey, that's just a theory. Props to the voice acting as well as whoever was behind the whispers that began corrupting Strange. That was some pretty good horror. Age of X is our next episode for the timeline as we see the first class of X-Men started in 1963. Our narrator talks about what Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters really was. If you're unaware, it was a school and safe haven for mutants as in Marvel they are subject to prejudice from the government. How unrealistic. The video claims that September things went wrong. We're introduced to Charles Xavier, who was said to be a loving man who just wanted peace between mutants and humans. The X-Men were brought into the world with the team consisting of Cyclops, Angel, Iceman, Beast, and Jean, who was revealed to be the narrator. Everything was great. Then one day, the Fire Nation attacked. Literally. An anti-mutant group burned down the mansion, which killed Professor X inside. Nightcrawler really left his ass, huh? Due to this, Scott had a mental breakdown. He declares war, despite Jean's pleas. Iceman and Beast try to reason with him, but he responds by killing them. Angel sticks around cause friends forever, I guess, as Jean ran off. Cyclops and his new X-Army declare war on the human world as Jean reveals Scott brought out a monster. It's your favorite everyone, the angry hairy Canadian himself, Wolverine. Jean is now working with Fury to try and stop Scott as she tells Havoc, Polaris, Jubilee, Kitty, and Magic to keep fighting for what Charles believed in. The last note is her encouraging Havoc to kill his brother Scott. So if you're not an X-Men fan, this might be a little confusing, but in short, the first class depicted is indeed the original X-Men team. The X-Men fight prejudice and injustice, trying to unite humanity while also trying to foil Magneto's plans for waging a full-on war against humanity. Scott, or Cyclops, has indeed done this kind of heel turn before and gone all warmonger on the humans, so this is somewhat accurate despite it being a characteristic of Magneto. It's important to note that really the X-Men are a team meant to signify marginalized groups in history. Xavier and Magneto were even inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, respectively. This makes it an all the more tragic end that Scott gave into hatred, murdering his own teammates. But as for the quality of the episode itself, I'd say it was overall fine. There were no voices or any real scares, but rather a horrifying depiction of a Scott that has gone off the deep end. I'd say it was better as a peek into the story of this universe despite it not being all that scary in my humble opinion. Our next episode, I believe timeline-wise, is a bit further out, but I do still think it's worth the cover, that being Down the Witch's Road, focusing on Scarlet Witch. We open with an agent named Jasper Sitwell interviewing Wanda Maximoff about the X-Men incident. She asks why she's being recorded, but states her name and confirms she is a mutant. She reveals last year her brother Quicksilver was killed, as was her father Magneto. Yo, what the fuck, dude? Who am I gonna main now? Black Widow? Wanda claims she didn't support Magneto's ideals of mutant supremacy and explains that the X-Men attacked, but they looked different. Colossus straight up ripped Quicksilver in half, yeesh, and Storm fried Magneto. Bro, when are they going to nerf Storm?
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else.
The rest were killed by Rogue, Cyclops, and Wolverine. Wanda was rescued by a woman named Agatha Harkness, but Agatha is said to have been alive during the witch trial days. Wanda claims that she was the one who taught her magic. The agent claims that the last magic user they had was Doctor Strange, who went on a rampage and looked like a rotted corpse by the end of it. You got that skin right as they nerfed him, didn't they? They mentioned that Strange was talking about all the events happening because of a force. Wanda likens it to how a book is written by someone. We're told that lately a bloody A symbol has been appearing, to which Wanda claims it means Avengers. They are said to want to bring a state of order to the world and was formed by Stark. I think I'm gonna start maining Rocket at this point. Wanda claims Scott is coming to kill Jean and is mad she made him kill his brother. Wanda claims she'll ensure the X-Men are dead, but that she isn't alone. The agent begins to get worried as Wanda reveals she knows who he is, as the agent wonders who sent her. We hear some footsteps and then hear the agent getting choked, non-sexually. It's revealed to be Iron Man, as the two seem to be in cahoots. We cut to Jean, who claims Tony and Wanda killed a bunch of people at a S.H.I.E.L.D. outpost. She witnessed the recording of Wanda we just saw. Jean reveals that she hates herself for all that's happened as she laments the fallen, among them being my DPS main. Fuck! Feeling as though she failed her professor, Jean cuts to her last resort to kill the X-Men, claiming it is not on Earth but rather in space. She leaves Fury in hopes that this will work, as we see a bird show up on screen. Okay, so there is a lot to talk about here. We haven't revealed that Wanda and Tony are a team, but there was an interesting bit I'd like to talk about. When the agent talks about the Doctor Strange comment, talking about as if he is being controlled by someone and that someone's making all this happen, Wanda seemed as if she understood what he said. I could be reading into it, but considering Wanda is confirmed to know magic thanks to Agatha, who was quite experienced if she's made it this long, 'tis possible that she knows what's going on. Perhaps maybe she's even behind it. As for the video itself, I was happier to see a return to the more traditional analog horror roots, with this being a recording of a S.H.I.E.L.D. interview with Wanda. Also, huge props to the voice actress. She was really good. Like, seriously, she nailed it. The last thing we'll talk about is the finale. For those not initiated, Jean in the comics comes into contact with a cosmic entity called the Phoenix. In short, it makes her super powerful, but it corrupts her mind. Movie fans will remember not one, but two movie attempts at this, with The Last Stand and the movie that shall not be named. I'm not quite sure how Jean knows of this, considering I think it was literally just bad luck that Jean got it in the comics. But then again, Hank Pym didn't have ants-eat humans in the comics. Instead, he just beat his wife, so. The last video we're covering fully in this series is The Truth. No reconciliation. It starts with Dr. Doom claiming if we're watching this, then we know who he is. Quite the bold assumption. He removes his mask to reveal the handsome face and introduces himself as Victor Von Doom and gives us his backstory. He was born in the capital of Latveria with a mother who was into hocus-pocus type stuff and lived impoverished due to the nation's oppressive policies. His father died of the cold and his mom was killed by the devil. One definitely scored more aura points here. In a bid to survive, Dr. Doom got into the wicked witchy ways in hopes that he can save his mother. Doom laments failing to do so, but when one door closes, another opens, as he was able to secure a scholarship in New York. He had quite the good time at college, must have been a frat bro, but all that came crashing down when he met Reed Richards. He has quite the strong opinion of the man, believing Reed's ambition of a spaceship was nothing compared to the ambitions of his ambition, that being to make an interdimensional portal to save his mother. Shooting for the stars, it seems. Reed claimed his invention was flawed, to which Doom immediately proved him right when he turned the machine on and it blew up in his face. Doom blames Reed for it still, and then we see he's been plotting against all the big-time heroes of the Marvel Universe. Doom, then between insane laughters, claims he killed the Beyonder, as well as Reed, Doctor Strange, and has used the powers of the Beyonder to revert time. In doing so, he has essentially made a new timeline where everyone is, well, kind of a dick. Which means, oh my god, Doom is the origami killer! Essentially, he did it out of jealousy, believing he can now expose the heroes as the monsters that they really are. Doom reveals his successor to be none other than Wanda Maximoff, and that she shall finish what he started. Her goal being to destroy Iron Man while he does what must be done, which is, well, shit.
I'll see you in hell, Richard!
We hear a door open up as the Fantastic Four enter to see Doom has, well, unalived. The Thing is quite shocked as Johnny kinda just dunks on his ass. Rude. Reed, however, is skeptical about what the reasoning behind this was. Sue notices a tape recorder that belongs to Wanda Maximoff. Alright, so, looks like we got a big driving force of the story moving forward. Dr. Doom's monologue about his past is pretty much on par with his comic story, so there really isn't much to review there. But it seems like we're in some kind of dark what-if story. That being Doom pretty much rebooting the save and now playing the game on easy mode. Additionally, now he's got a companion in Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch. Comics-wise, this is somewhat accurate. It's not based exactly off of any story that I'm aware of. I'm also not a comic guru. But if your only exposure to the character is the movies, well, you're probably not aware Dr. Doom is usually quite involved in high-level storylines. He routinely threatens the fate of the world and reality itself unless he's faced with Skrulls. So Dr. Doom pretty much turning this universe upside down is entirely on brand. Additionally, his partnership with Wanda is a comic-accurate thing. The two have gotten romantic at some point in the comics as well, but admittedly, the nature of their relationship in this is unclear if it moves anywhere past teacher and student. On that note, though, it seems we finally have our answers. The Doctor Strange theory I had with the whispers being Wanda might have been true, considering we now know Wanda is working with the person who rewrote the timeline. It also explains how Wanda was seemingly a bit too understanding of what Doctor Strange was trying to say. With Doom being gone, it seems like Wanda is poised to be one of the big villains. Granted, she's got competition with Tony and Scott. I think I'll just stick to the stars with my boys in the Milano. Enjoy my amplifiers. So remember when I said there's other reasons we're only covering a little of this series? Well, now's the time for that payoff. I know, genius writing. Remember in the Wanda episode I said I appreciated the return to more traditional analog horror means? Well, there really isn't a lot of that for the majority of these episodes. A lot of it turns into characters just talking to each other with nothing that kind of fits the format of analog horror. I know I said it earlier in the Spider-Man one, I appreciated breaking a bit from the format, but the difference was that it did this sparingly. It wasn't too often it did this. As a result, it managed to maintain the analog horror feel that it was going for. That's not to say the rest of this is bad or not even scary, however. There were a couple moments that did fuck with me a little. Vision's voice in the Wonder Man episode was among them. Fuck this fucking droid. Additionally, there are a couple more episodes that are a bit more analog horror-y. There's a Moon Knight PSA, as well as a couple episodes regarding Wanda's backstory that left me a little disturbed. They take the form of a cartoon with a creepy voice and creepy music playing. It's very unnerving, but in the analog horror way. The analogies are clearly supposed to represent much darker events, and as stated, the voice is just oh so freaky. Again, it's not bad, and I'd say if this universe interests you, definitely give it a look. The roster expands a lot with Captain Marvel, Werewolf by Night, Blade, Daredevil, and a lot of the X-Men debuting. Though there's no signs of my boy Gambit. He's too busy making a name for himself. Really, it's just not something we cover much on this channel. I'll tell you what, if you guys want us to, I'll do a full series review. Props to the actors and the creator. They seem like they were having fun and really have a passion for the work that they're making. So that's it. We're done. You know, this might actually be the first episode in a bit where I didn't cover zombies. Crazy, isn't it? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this and... Okay, wait. Of course. Marvel's Omnibus. So yes, there is Marvel Zombies analog horror. Once again, I'm talking about zombies on this channel. What can I say? The end of the world is just oh so enticing to me for some reason. That said, in order to better understand this concept, it would probably be wise to review the original storyline. This definitely isn't the usual content we give, so if you're uninterested, skip to the timestamp and we'll jump along into the analog horror bit of it. Again, this is mostly information to benefit the viewer. Plus, I read this entire damn thing in a dark room, so I'll be damned if I don't get to talk about it at least a little bit. Beware of spoilers for the comic. This isn't going to be a play-by-play, instead more of a review of the storyline and what it consists of. Marvel Zombies got its first comic in 2005 by Robert Kirkman, and if that name sounds familiar, then someone probably watched our 28 Days Later video. Robert Kirkman was the original writer of the Walking Dead comic and was actually contacted by Ralph Macchio to make the Marvel Zombies comic. Yes, that Ralph Macchio. So in some ways, this means the Karate Kid is responsible for the zombie outbreak in Marvel. Can't wait for this Fortnite event. The series has gone through multiple authors and even got an adaptation in the MCU's What If. Robert Kirkman even said that when writing the comic, he was shocked he was even allowed to do this. As a result, he started pushing the envelope as much as he could, as his goal was to see where Marvel was going to draw the line with him. And I'm not gonna lie, it kinda shows, but we'll get to that in a sec. Let's start with a rundown of the opening and just what the comic is all about. In short, the opening to Zomnibus, titled Dead Days, starts with Spider-Man having been infected by the Avengers after they went to investigate some kind of commotion, which saw them become zombified. Spider-Man goes to MJ and Aunt May, but quickly succumbs to the infection and eats them alive. Nick Fury tries to gather the remaining heroes to combat this, which includes the Fantastic Four. The team is currently grieving as Reed and Sue's children were eaten by the infected. The majority of the comic is heroes either dying, panicking, fighting amongst themselves, trying to find a solution to all this, or succumbing to their feeding urges, as the zombies in this universe can actually talk. Long story short, the remaining heroes are put onto the helicarrier as a cure is being worked on by Mr. Fantastic, but he ends up infecting the Fantastic Four intentionally as he wants to know what it's like to become a zombie. Cool. The infection spreads, kills or infects the remaining survivors, and reveals Mr. Fantastic is working on a multiverse machine that he plans to use to infect the multiverse, setting up the rest of the arc. So I don't mean to sound super negative when starting out this review, but to me, the biggest thing holding this comic series back was its severe inconsistent tone. A big part of that is tied to the aforementioned goal of Robert Kirkman wanting to find Marvel's limit. There's moments that are dark comedy, like Banner eating someone and then whining that their bone is sticking out of his stomach like it's a simple tummy ache. Then there's moments like Ant-Man kidnapping Black Panther and slowly removing his limbs so he can keep him as a steady food supply before he ends up biting the Wasp's head off after she confronts him. There's also silly and lighthearted ideas, like an entire universe where everyone is literally monkey-themed, right down to puns for names around the change, and this universe has to fight off the zombies. Then there's these moments that seem to outright ignore the story in favor of pure shock factor. A prime example of this is that Spider-Man is supposedly cured of the insatiable hunger the zombies feel, but is transported to another universe. While there, his webs run out, so he swings on his veins. Gross. And then just suddenly goes wild and absolutely decimates 5 of the Sinister Six, Sandman being the only survivor. Sandman runs off, but runs into his actual Spider-Man, believing it's the zombified one that just outright murdered all of his friends. Sandman then acts first and starts suffocating Spider-Man with sand while claiming he's going to rule New York and destroy all he loves for what he did, while Spider-Man helplessly cries for Gwen before popping like a balloon before we see zombified Gwen Stacy eating her friends. Yeah, this is all the same storyline. Admittedly, not all of this was Robert Kirkman's writing, so it's entirely possible he didn't want to see Sandman murder Spider-Man in such a horrific fashion, but it's tonal shifts like this that confused me. Is this supposed to be actually scary, lighthearted, or darkly humorous? It's not helped by the fact that the story also repeats itself a decent bit, as it usually follows the zombified heroes eating someone. They complain there's no food, zombified Spider-Man expresses guilt for all he's done, and then they either find more food or zombified Hulk rages out, which then repeats the cycle. It's also not helped that a lot of the characters are seemingly depicted as the absolute worst versions of themselves. There's the aforementioned Mr. Fantastic dooming humanity, and Hank abusing his wife even worse now, but that's not even all. There's a weird moment, I think, where Tony gets a little uncomfortably fine with belittling Luke Cage because of his social status. It's a bit odd seeing Tony Stark think he's above Luke for being a street-level hero and has some odd implications, if you get what I mean. Granted, one could argue the reason these characters are depicted like this is to portray the corruption of the infection, and just how much addiction destroys even the purest of souls. But even then, there's this one bit where we see an alternate universe where Stark Tower is invaded by the zombies in the middle of Tony's alcoholic issues. Instead of choosing to rise up and help Pepper and Rhodey, he just gives up and decides to drink himself to death while the zombies invade his company, leading to Rhodes having to suit up. It's a cool moment for Rhodey, but it almost seems like such a mean-spirited depiction of Tony. Dude really seems to be going through it this episode, doesn't he? It's not to say the comic is necessarily bad, as there is still stuff to enjoy. For starters, the art has moments of sheer brilliance. The part of the storyline where zombie Mr. Fantastic lures Ultimate Mr. Fantastic into his universe, where he must now evade all the zombified heroes, has amazing art, and great tension as it feels very survival horror-esque. There's multiple points like this where you can see just how terrifying the zombies are with the great level of detail that's on their body. It does lead to yet again more inconsistency though, because sometimes the zombies are just portrayed with pupilless eyes, jagged teeth, and slightly green skin as the signal that they're infected. On that note though, it should be said that there is a decent amount of action that is fun to watch. Wolverine slicing through zombies was of course a joy to watch, as well as Magneto having a last stand, and even using Colonel America's shield against the zombies was cool to see. Yeah, for some reason, he's called Colonel America instead of Captain. They don't really explain why, nor does this affect the story all that much. Though we do find out Steve did get elected as president, oddly enough, but he didn't even survive his first term. That's unrealistic. He's retirement home age and he hangs out with billionaires. It should be noted that the action here does get pretty creative at times. We get shit like zombified Avengers versus Galactus, which was odd, but the novelty of such a thing is pretty fun. Moments like these are honestly what saves the comic. Mostly because it does feel like Robert Kirkman is having so much fun with the idea, as it is admittedly silly to some degree. It's also got a unique spin on the zombie story formula, as we're primarily following a group of Avengers infected and their never-ending quest for food. This may disappoint some people, maybe looking for something akin to the What If episode of it being more survival-based, but there is no denying that this is a creative choice. Not since Warm Bodies have I seen a more humanizing take on this type of monster by making zombies the protagonist of the storyline. Overall, I'd say the comic was a mixed bag. It seems to be more style than substance, and I'm not quite sure it has the best grasp of understanding its characters. But I won't deny some of the amazing visuals, the novelty of its storylines, and the creativity on display. I wouldn't say I'm disappointed in it. I was just expecting a bit more. I know there's another Zomnibus, so maybe that one explores the idea better. But let's get back to the videos. No more silly pages. Outbreak. Marvel Zombies Analog Horror. Uploaded by EP Films, or is it EP Films? We open up with the static on a TV screen before we see a news report explaining that Earth's mightiest heroes are gone. Something happened and caused Captain America to start lashing out at people. We get a quick flash of a zombified Captain America attacking the camera before the reporter says that all we can do is hope someone can save us. We see footage of a zombie eating someone before we see a zombie attack occur in public. We then cut to what is totally not a scene from Wreck, where a zombified lady attacks the camera. The emergency broadcast system plays for a bit and we cut to numerous news reports. one claiming the Avengers are gone and that there is a zombie outbreak. The audio glitches as we can hear Reed Richards. He says they're in space, and that he will find a cure to fix all of this. We then cut to Reed's favorite Halo map before he tells Victor it's time to get to work, to which Victor agrees, it's time to get to work. The video is pretty quick as it's only 2 minutes long, but it does almost seem like a trailer of what to expect of this type of adaptation of the storyline. Most of the information was told through the usage of news reports and quick flashes of the outbreak. I'd say it was fine, but there was a couple issues. There's nothing really wrong with this, but I'm sure a lot of it is borrowed footage. As stated, I know the exact scene from Wreck in the opening news reports was definitely not synced with the audio. Because of that, I wouldn't be shocked if all of this footage is just borrowed work. Again, not bad, but compared to the original work we have seen, it does sort of break the immersion. That said, the zombie version of Cap did look pretty good. I'm not sure if that was borrowed footage and where it would be from, but it was a great visual for the episode. I'd say this is a pretty good start, as we will still have more to come. Marvel Zombies, the Analog Horror Series. Uploaded by Homelander Main, the series at the time of recording is only 8 episodes long. We won't cover the entire series, but instead cover some of the videos I feel stick out. The first being our intro, the Fantastic Four incident. Seems like these guys are always getting into trouble. The video opens with the text claiming that what we are about to see was recovered from the ruins of the Baxter Building. We see a picture of the Fantastic Four before it says Reed was able to make contact with another world known as Dimension 696. He. If you remember, I did briefly mention something like this did happen in the comic itself, and much like that comic, Reed entered and found a very different world. This Reed, however, returned zombified based on the sketch of his face. We cut to March 16th, 2006, and are told on an average day, the Fantastic Four suddenly became the first infected of this universe. We see a now zombified picture of the characters as the title of the series is revealed. Similar to the last video, this was mainly a trailer for what is to come. Overall, it was okay. It was a bit too text-heavy and there were some grammatical errors, but for what it is, it did its job fine. The next video, Spider-Man's Last Stand, starts with a text telling us the narrator remembers the day that the Baxter Building was destroyed. A photo shows the burning building and says Spider-Man was among the first to arrive. Despite the pleas of the Avengers, he still went inside. So one autopsy report later, we are told that inside, the Fantastic Four were found near Spider-Man. We are shown another zombified picture of the Four, as we then see our narrator is none other than Dr. Kirk Connors, pledging to stop them. The video itself was pretty short as it was just over a minute, but we do have more information on this world, which is the important part. It's not clear, but if the Fantastic Four are the first infected, it's safe to assume the Human Torch might have been the one to burn down the building. Perhaps he likes his meat barbecued. Spider-Man seems to be the first one outside of the Four to have died at this point. Why the Avengers didn't help him is a bit odd, but I imagine this will likely be explained in the future. My only real issue so far is I'm not exactly scared of the content, but hey, we're 2 episodes in. There's still plenty of time to wet myself. The next episode we're going to cover jumps further into the timeline. The reason being I felt this episode stuck out a bit, so why not give it some priority, right? We start with what sounds like someone trying to work a tape player before we see the most trusted news anchor in America, J. Jonah Jameson, and his show. It's a normal Spider-Man slander before the video freezes. A text that says hero appears before we cut to black. The text then says it has been 2 days since the initial outbreak has occurred. This thing, no, not that thing, only affected superheroes, which means now civilians are, as they say, fucked. The text laments how everyone thought he was crazy for calling Spider-Man crazy. The text reveals that this indeed is J. Jonah Jameson, live from the department, but his situation is desperate. He's low on food, and the zombies are closing in. He pleads for anyone listening to send help before we hear a window break. We see a close-up of Spider-Man as the cries of Jameson can be heard as our video ends. The video seems to stay accurate to the comic in terms of how fast the infection spread. It was a pretty quick turnaround for Earth in terms of the actual infection numbers, as by the end of the first comic, there was barely any survivors left standing. As to if the infection only infects the supers, I'm not entirely sure. If I remember correctly, we only saw superheroes getting infected, but that's probably because they ate any regular humans like Jarvis. Though you could also argue perhaps Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne, Clint Barton, and Tony Stark being infected shows it can indeed infect regular humans as their powers came from their suits. The same can be said in the aforementioned comic where zombie Spider-Man faces the Sinister Six as a zombified Gwen can be seen on page. The video did include an original photo of a zombified Spider-Man in the dark, which was spooky to stare at, and also chronicled Jameson's final moments. Content like this in the Marvel zombie setting is quite interesting, as it showcases just how scary superheroes are in this state. There's no word on the other heroes, but considering how big the infection has gotten in 2 days according to Jameson, we probably shouldn't hold our breath for our favorite heroes having survived. The final episode we are covering is S.H.I.E.L.D. Last Message. Fitting title. We open with someone logging into a S.H.I.E.L.D. database before we see our user is Maria Hill. She asks if anyone is still alive and reading this to know that the US and S.H.I.E.L.D. have fallen. Even Fury is confirmed dead, with all registered hero teams also being confirmed infected. Does that include Brute Force? Maria shows pretty much all the infected teams and that they've destroyed all maximum security prisons and hope the metahumans can do something against the infected. Really banking that they won't get infected there, Agent Hill. She shows us some security footage of the last 3 days. And then we see a clueless worker leave the building as he walks past a supposed body. He tries to move them before he jump scares him, and he starts to get a bit of a headache, it looks like. The body begins to crawl about before we see presumably the same guy walking across the street. He didn't look both ways and therefore was properly punished for jaywalking. The dude must have some places to be because he starts crawling his ass towards the dude. He attacks a second driver as the other car speeds off. How heroic. The footage repeats a few more times before Maria confirms that there are no more known shelters. The Wakanda or Genosha, whatever, you'll all tell me, might have some. We hear some movement as Hill claims he's still there, before we get a jump scare of a zombie attack symbolizing our agent is likely dead. The message is over, but it says it was sent to Latveria. We zoom out to see that we are watching from someone's perspective with text that says, if the world has fallen, then it belongs to Doom now. Quite interesting. The episode being from the perspective of Dr. Doom was actually a good twist of events, as well as the whole format being a message from Hill to anyone she can reach. I'd also like to say the camera footage was a good step as well, though the repeating of that last clip felt a little redundant, unless I missed something. The series isn't over, it seems, so there's likely some answers coming along the way, but overall I'd say this was a promising series of what we've seen so far. Well, that was quite a lot of videos. It's been a bit since we've brought you guys an epic, so it had to be me. Someone else would have gotten it wrong. It seems like the Marvel analog horror genre is still a growing area, but there's a lot of promise in what I've seen so far. It's quite a creative community from its voice acting, its animation, its writing, and many other aspects that gave us quite a lot of variety in our content. I still feel there's some room for growth, but hey, nothing is perfect. I guess my one complaint is that a lot of the series has decided to simply use the method of corrupting our heroes as the basis of their idea. While there's nothing inherently wrong with that idea, I feel there's still a lot we can do with the heroes and villains just the way they are. Some of the Hulk ones touch on how the character doesn't need much adjustment to actually be terrifying. There's a lot of room for exploration there, as I feel simple stuff like 911 audio trying to get help from a Hulk incident would be pretty terrifying to hear, especially if done with voice actors like the ones we have here. Additionally, some characters like Namor have shown potential for horror content, I believe, as there was an entire comic of him straight up terrorizing submarines in the ocean. The villains as well, I feel, have some potential for being subjects of analog horror. Carnage, with or without the symbiote, is just begging for it as he was a serial killer beforehand, with the symbiote only making him more terrifying. Other characters like Bullseye and Morbius also show great potential for analog horror, considering one is Joker levels insane and the other is a literal vampire. Someone's gotta bring the Morb in time, right? But at the end of the day, I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm excited to see where a lot of the series goes, so who knows? Maybe a part 2 will be in order. If you actually sat through all of that, props to you. Every week, we always try to find something to keep you all happy, and we're always happy to see the support you have all shown us. I say this every episode, but 4+ is impossible without you guys. You really are the most important piece to all of this. As always, we'll see you next week, and can't wait to see what horrors we'll find next. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I can see Spider-Man flying towards my window. How exciting. What are you still doing here, man? It's over. Go on. Go home. Or, well, I guess you probably already are home, considering you're watching this on YouTube, but video's over, man. What I'm getting at. It's been enough, alright? My editor, he's entitled to a free Marvel Rifle skin off this whole thing, so, yeah. You think I'm kidding, by the way. He really is. Point is, just go home, okay? Thanks.